Welcome back to our Mishnah Berurah learning. We are in Siman Reish Samech Vet, where we have been talking about how we set our table, our Shulchan Aruch, really how we design the user experience of Shabbat physically in this space in our homes. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the clothing that we wear, which is, again, part of creating that space and that experience overall for ourselves and internalizing the spirituality and the holiness, the Kedusha of the space and the experience of Shabbat. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Yishtadel sheyu lo begadim na'im l'Shabbat. So a person should make every effort to have really beautiful clothing for Shabbat. V'im efshar lo, and if this isn't possible for them, lefachot yishalshel, that the practice should be to lengthen the clothing a little bit, which is apparently somehow how people who were at a higher level of wealth or whatever would dress, where they would have longer clothing, and this is begadav lematza derech kavod, that this was, longer was somehow a way of showing kavod. Really, it's even if you don't have the ability to have nicer clothes for Shabbat, you should somehow make what you already have even nicer. So it's like beautifying what you already have. And yilbash begadav hanaim. You should wear these. You should dress yourself in these beautiful clothes. Says the Mishnah Berurah Yishtadel regarding someone putting the effort in to have this kind of clothing for Shabbat that's separate. This is really fulfilling v'chibadato. This is the act of giving kavod, of honoring Shabbat that we've been discussing. V'darshu Chazal, and our rabbis teach, shelo yeh malbushecha shel Shabbat k'malbushecha shel chol. Our clothing for Shabbat shouldn't be the same clothing that we have for the regular weekday that we wear during the week. V'tov shelo yilbash b'Shabbat mikol ma shelabash b'chol afilu chaluk. And it's really like good practice that we shouldn't wear whatever we wear during the week on Shabbat, even our jacket, even our coat. Even Charlo tov shielo gam talit acher lo Shabbat. That if it even and even like all the more so, it'd be really nice to have a separate talis for Shabbat, a talit. This is certainly, as Mishnah Berurah unpacks it, kifiyah cholto, according to someone's ability, which is we also touched on a little bit last time. That we want to make sure that we're not creating this expectation to spend lots of money per se, but rather we are trying to make it so that we have an awareness that, the space is different, my clothing is different, this is Shabbat. And especially if you think historically, when people didn't necessarily have so many different outfits or items in the way that we have the privilege to these days, having, a separate item for Shabbat only, or like a separate coat, was a very, very significant choice to make. And then there's a very interesting piece that the Mishnah Berurah adds. Even if a person is traveling on his own and just by himself, or like in a situation where there's a house where there's no Jews, so they're traveling, they're just really by themselves, no one else is keeping Shabbat. Gam ken yobash bigdei Shabbat. Nevertheless, that person should still dress themselves in the clothing of Shabbat. And this is the best part. Ki ein hamalbushim lichvod haroim ki im lichvod haShabbat. Because this whole thing about having ourselves wear the bigdei Shabbat, the clothing of Shabbat, is to honor Shabbat. It's not that we're dressing for those who are haroim, for those who are going to see us. We're not putting on nice things so that other people will see us and think about us, but rather this is all about honoring Shabbat. So it's, wearing clothes to be seen versus wearing clothes to help ourselves see Shabbat or see Hashem all around us. There's a bunch else here in the text about even, should someone be carrying a child if their clothing is going to get dirty, which is, I'll just say a big conversation. And also, especially today with the abilities that we have to have different clothing, is worth unpacking separately. So we can talk a little bit about that next time. But I think that the most powerful piece that's coming out of this text for me, and I hope that you feel this as well, and we talk about this nourishment, is that Shabbat, again, is about helping ourselves internalize an ethic. And anytime, certainly during the week, recognizing we are dressing ourselves with an awareness of, Ribono Shel Olam, that God is always present with us. We should hold ourselves with dignity. We know Mishnah Berurah even starts the halachot of how we start our day. We're supposed to start our day recognizing that we're, Ka'ari, we're like a lion ready, getting up before God, serving Hashem in fullness, having a constant awareness. So yes, we should always have this awareness that, our clothes aren't for other people, or the way that we treat our bodies isn't for other people. It's about respecting the body that Hashem gave us. But the fact that on Shabbat we pause and we recognize, even if we were completely by ourselves with no one else keeping Shabbat, we would want to make sure that we know it's Shabbat. It's not just a reminder, but it's also a way of teaching ourselves how to not focus on the physical, but the spiritual. And so I think, while we could read this halacha and think, oh, this is, wear nice clothes, it's really not that at all. This isn't a superficial piece in any way. It's a way of donning, of putting on Kedusha. If we think even like the Kohanim, like how the priests with the clothing that they would wear in their service of Hashem, what would it look like for you to start Shabbat this week and imagine yourself almost like the Kohen Gadol or the Kohanim getting ready, getting dressed for service of God? Maybe there would be a sense of humility, of excitement, of joy, of love. Next time we're going to talk a little bit about the simcha that comes with how we greet Shabbat. And, especially I mentioned children before, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But for now, I want to encourage you to reflect on what it would be like to start your Shabbat with an awareness that we have humility about the physical, and that we are grateful to be able to elevate the physical into the spiritual.